Talk to me nice, talk to me honestly. Look in my eyes, don't let it fall.
Well, thank you everybody who has decided to spend their Friday afternoon, evening for some with Deandra and I on this workshop. What would you tell your younger self? We were super excited when we heard of this opportunity to do it. So we can't thank you enough as you close out this event, deciding to spend your time with us. So before we get started, just wanted to let you know, as Deandra and I were preparing for this session, we really kind of had just one simple, clear goal, and that was to share our stories and perspectives with you all to encourage and empower each and every one of you. So even if there's one little nugget, a key takeaway you can get from this and hang on to, we've done our job, and we'll be happy here. So feel free to drop questions into the Q&A. We will address those at the end. We've reserved some time at the end. Would love to answer your questions, and then also use the chat. I see everyone's very active in there, so it's great. And then I said this again if you heard me, but I'll repeat it. We have Anthea from the Palo Alto Network's talent acquisition team in chat today. She'll be answering any questions you have related to career opportunities at Palo Alto Networks, and she has also dropped in a link there so you can apply for roles and attach your resume, which will show as a referral for this workshop. So without further ado, before we dive too far in, let's kick off with some quick intros. I'm Danielle Knight. I am a mother of two young children. I have a 7-year-old daughter and a 3-year-old son, who I think is like the definition of a Sour Patch Kid. He is extremely sweet and sour. If we had him first, I don't know that we would have had a second child. I'd be curious if any other mothers out there feel the same way. Anyway, I'm also a wife. I've been with Palo Alto Networks for about 2.5 years. I'm the global program manager for the business operations PMO. I couldn't have landed at a better company. I'm so fortunate and thrilled to be working alongside such amazing people. So with that, over to you, Deandra.
All right, thank you, Danielle. Hi, everyone. I'm Deandra Jean-Louis. I'm the Vice President of Customer Success for our network security department within Palo Alto Networks. I've been with the company for about 1.5 years now. I currently split my time between California and Texas with my husband of 15 years. I'm originally from Louisiana, but I've called a number of countries as well as far too many states home since I graduated from LSU. I've been working with sales teams, ran sales teams, partnered with sales teams since the beginning of my career, and global is the most important thing for me. And that's why my favorite hobbies are traveling and eating at restaurants, which are two super non-COVID activities. So for the last few months, we've been renovating a home, and I do that in between Zoom calls. So, all right, enough about us. Now let's segue. Again, thank you all for joining today's workshop. What would I tell my younger self? And in short, what I'd say to my younger self is to always be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Now, what exactly does that mean? Well, for me, I was incredibly shy as a child, but I had a huge desire to do massive things. I wanted to travel the world. I wanted to live in Europe. I wanted to live in New York. I wanted to be an astronaut. I wanted to be a model. But I knew I had to step out of my comfort zone, and I also knew I had to leave the South. I started very early by putting myself in incredibly uncomfortable situations to learn and to grow. My first truly uncomfortable step was to actually become a professional runway model. I was very tall, still am, and far too skinny, so not anymore for my height. And my career took off, honestly, in one of the weirdest ways. It started in China. I won an international modeling competition, go figure, where no Americans at all were going to China. I met people from all over the world. I learned about an incredible culture firsthand. There were honestly no guidebooks for Americans going to China. There was no, Black social hangouts in Beijing. None of that existed. And then fast forward a number of years, I moved to Europe, and I began to build a services region for Workday in EMEA from the ground up. I personally grew, honestly, beyond my wildest dreams. And that shy little girl, she still lives within me. She comes out on weekends when my brain and my body need a rest from all the adrenaline that I continue to pump in it. But, you fast forward to today, and it was another one of those uncomfortable moments. I just recently started to participate in events like this because telling my personal story always made me feel just incredibly uncomfortable. But I'll happily tell you everything you need to know about work. I can talk about Palo Alto Networks, other companies, and ad nauseum. I can tell you about my role. I can tell you how to put implementations in to fix all of your issues. But telling you my backstory, oh no, that's personal. But honestly, what I learned in my backstory was actually very inspirational. So I recently started to share and encourage others to share and step out of their shells to see the world. Our parents, their struggles have defined their past, but not ours. We can define our future. So I tell myself every day, look for challenges that just get harder and harder, and make yourself comfortable with being uncomfortable. So I'll transition to Daniel.
Yeah, and I kind of want to piggyback on that. Always be comfortable being uncomfortable. And to be honest, that's exactly why I chose to do this opportunity. Deandra and I are very similar in the sense that I'm very uncomfortable in this space. I do not like attention on me. I don't like to make it about me. I would very much prefer to be sort of heads down behind the scenes. But I know that to sort of grow and evolve, I need to push myself in these uncomfortable areas. And so again, when I was, presented this opportunity, I was extremely excited, so nervous, hesitant, resistant, but I knew that in order to grow and evolve, I needed to do it. And what better partner to start with Deandra? She's been so great and amazing. So it's been great. So I'll kind of segue into the next, and that's just I would tell myself, always be curious. I've always had this passion to learn. I feel like I'm a natural sponge, and I want to know it all, or at least a little bit of it all. I know that there's areas like science, for example, that I never even want to delve into. But the area, general areas, I've got this craving to learn. And just, I can't stress enough to take any and all opportunities to do that. And it's also okay, I would tell my younger self, it's okay to go out of order. And I put that in air quotes because, I think there's this expectation that you will go to high school, you will go to college, then you'll start your career. It's very sequential. And I had anxiety in the fact that I wasn't taking that path. So for example, I graduated high school, and rather than sort of following what all my friends were doing, or, maybe what I should be doing and going to a university and campus, I decided to do part-time education at a community college. And it wasn't until I was 30 years old that I completed my BA with a newborn. And so, it might not have been the ultimate order because it was extra challenging in the sense that I had this brand new family. I was managing work. I was managing, my school and education. But the experience that I had was a night and day difference. And it almost sort of baffles me that if there's this expectation to immediately go into school and figure out what you want to major in right out of high school, because you just don't know. And if I followed that, I thought I wanted to be a certified public accountant. And I'm just so thankful that I had trust in the fact that I was going to go a little bit out of order. And I just sort of followed that path, and it was just a night and day different experience. And with that, sort of, there's this process that I've always started to follow, to learn, right? Again, I'll say it again, accept and take any opportunity to continue your education, whether it's formally or informally, just do it. And develop. So as you are learning and growing, sort of hone and refine your skills and expertise, and really figure out what it is what you like to do and what you don't like to do. That's part of the process. And then I promise you, if you just sort of commit to that process, there's points of reflection that I've had when I've sort of stepped back and I've assessed the cycle, if you will, or the situation. And I've been so impressed with myself in what I've learned. And not only that, but just sort of following that process and what it's built and the framework that I'm able to sort of build on. So I just can't stress that enough. Always be curious. I would tell that to my younger self. Deandra, would love to hear your sort of perspective on the always be curious point.
Oh, absolutely. I loved your comment, and I couldn't agree more with it. So, for me, for the always be curious, many years ago, I read this article about 3 years ago, actually, about hiring traits. Google's number one hiring trait was curiosity. And honestly, other companies continue to look for the same. Solving business challenges, I always remind myself and my teams, as well as my younger self, don't always come down to being the smartest person in the room. Honestly, it ends up being the most curious person in the room that actually gets down to the solution. You tend to get way more innovation. You have fewer decision-making errors. You and your team become what I like to call students of the game. If I look back at my time in Europe again, within those 5 years, honestly, it's that curiosity that helped me grow that team from 10 to 100 across Germany, Amsterdam, Paris, Madrid, places I had never been before. I grew the revenue significantly, 50% year over year, over a 5 year period. And we had incredible customer CSAT scores. And I was negotiating multi-million-dollar contracts. How did I do that? Because I was curious. I became a student of the game. I learned about being the mix of societies. I learned about the love and the hate that they have for each other in EMEA and all across the EU in general. I studied cultures. I learned how to I learned how to build a very diverse team in thought, in skill set, geography, and language. But honestly, the curiosity taught me how to have a voice. I was able to lead keynotes. I met with customers in super tricky sales cycles, and I stood my ground. But honestly, learning to build relationships, being someone who was so shy, was probably the biggest value that I got out of my curiosity. I was growing and I was learning. I was beyond uncomfortable and everything was moving so quickly, but I had to continue to just challenge myself and challenge the status quo and continue to be curious. And if there's anything I would say to my younger self, it's always look for work or assignments or anything you do in your life, especially the way Danielle put it in terms of just challenging how you look at educational norms, to just keep yourself to be on your toes. You'll be surprised at what you find in yourself and others. So
yeah, and just one more thing to add to that. I was recently at a conference similar to this, in one of the breakout workshops, and there was a career coach, and I loved sort of her talk track, and it stuck with me. But it was to choose one word for the year to sort of commit and live by, and hers was intentional. And it's funny, as I think about this cycle, this learn, develop, grow, I think naturally you become more intentional, right? As you're honing and refining and figuring out what you do and you do not like to do. And it's absolutely okay to do that. But her word was intentional, and it just resonated so much with me. So I just think that marries very well there.
Nope, I couldn't agree more. All right, so we have one more always be, as we like to call it, and it's always be true to yourself. So as I mentioned before, I grew up in Louisiana, deep South, and it gave me very strong Southern values. And my parents taught me to, as you say in the South, mind your manners. And they taught me to do well in school, but I have to really commend my father. He taught me there's no such thing as a girl job. So I was a tomboy. My dad had no issues with that. But in the South, at that young age, I was told to always stay in my lane. That's the South. Keep your head low, keep your dreams realistic. But honestly, this is where I disagreed with my parents, my teachers, my guidance counselors, practically anyone that told me that my dreams were unrealistic. So to my younger self, over the years, I saw that my dreams were achievable. And my parents, they learned to just shake their head when I'd call them from some random country at 2 a.m. and tell them everything's fine. But guess what I just did? Guess what I just ate? Guess what I just saw? And honestly, being true to myself today is doing what's important is the right thing for me. And I want everyone to take that note away. And the note that I have to give to all of you is, in order to do this and to remain true to yourself, what I've had to learn is to always have situational awareness. As shy as I am, I can be as bold as I need to, but just because you can do it doesn't mean everyone's going to always agree with it. And it also doesn't mean you can do it now. You've got to learn patience, know your audience, know your surroundings. Honestly, anything is achievable, but it takes skill, it takes time, it takes patience. And what I learned in Europe, build those relationships. You'll have a guide. It needs to be someone there to make sure as you make those steps or before you make a false step, there's someone there to help course correct. So that's my message for always be true to yourself. Danielle?
Yeah, and with that, I mean, it's so important, right, to build your network. That point that she made about the guide, and along the way, I've collected mentors that I use as those sounding boards to help me navigate this. And so the bigger the network you can get in, and the more support you can have, right, the better. In terms of being true to myself and what I would tell my younger self, it sounds so cliche, but it's exactly that. Just honor your values and stick to them. Learn to receive and process and manage what I'll call chatter, right? Everybody loves to give you their feedback and their input and whatnot. And it's absolutely okay to receive that and process it and manage it, but just know when you need to sort of compartmentalize it, right? And follow your own path and really be true to yourself. I'll give you a good example of that. I recently changed roles at Palo Alto Networks. and I'm now in the sales operations team. But I knew that, and I was chief of staff in the ecosystems org, and I knew that I had this really unique opportunity, and I loved what I was doing. But I knew I had like this itch I wanted to scratch in the operations world. I've always loved operations. I like to make things clean and seamless and efficient. And so sort of having this internal debate with myself, do I go for this new job and sort of, I don't want to say sacrifice, but sort of, walk away from this amazing role I had. And I knew it was a gem of an opportunity, but I trusted myself and my values, and I knew what I wanted. And I knew that for my long-term career, knowing that I do want to be immersed in operations, I knew it was the path and the right next step for me. And so again, receive and process the chatter, the feedback that you get along the way, but don't let it persuade you or make those decisions for you. You have to stay committed and true to yourself. And as long as you can commit to that, it's the right thing to do. So I can't stress enough, as cliche as it sounds, true to yourself, honor your values, stick to them, and it's okay to again, to just process and receive that input and feedback that you get from others, and do what you need to do with it, but follow your path there. All right. So with that, Deandra and I we realized there was this key theme, and it was this list of always be's, right? So again, our goal of this session was really to just encourage and empower each and every one of you, even if it's just one little thing, and inspire you to create your own list of always be's, or evolving it actually too, for that matter. So again, we want to thank you all for spending your Friday afternoon and evening as we close out the SIS event with us, with Deandra and I on this workshop. It's been such a treat. So I think what we'll do is open up to Q&A, if that works for you, Deandra.
Absolutely. Let's go for it.
All right, I'm gonna pop over there.
I think Anthea has a question in here also.
Yeah, let's just quickly look. Okay, Deandra, I'm gonna give this one to you. So what are your thoughts about having mentors or sponsors, and how do you go about finding them?
It's a good question. It's honestly, for going back to the shy person that I am, it's been a struggle, and I've found, especially growing up, you don't always have those ready-made mentors and sponsors when it comes to if you've got big, massive dreams. As a kid, I had a lot of mentors and sponsors that knew me, from my mother. She was a teacher. So for me to say I want to be a model, it took my mother, giving me the flexibility and for her the safety and security of knowing she could send me on long range trips with other groups of like-minded teenagers to really start to see what the broad world had out there. So a lot of it is just making sure you have the option and open to you're open to having those options to doing so. As an adult, I found, particularly when I was in Europe, partnering with the leadership outside of my own organization truly helped give me a different perspective. So many times you can get that siloed thinking from a mentor if it's someone that's really in your space at this point. So working with others in sales and product marketing and other groups helped me see a different vision for myself and a different path. Because if I look at the career paths that I've taken, it's very different from most, very similar to what you were saying, Danielle. So I look for mentors and sponsors outside of my comfort zone because they force me to think very differently about that. And for mothers, the one thing I have to really give my mom credit for is really having the faith that she was able to see something broader in me and giving me opportunities to get sponsors and mentors in a much more global way.
Yeah, and one thing you said that I think is key and so important is that balance in your mentors across the community, because you're right. You could have one that's just very, I don't want to say narrow focus, but you know what I mean, potentially guiding you a bit. And so the more balance you can have across your ecosystem of community, the better. I think that's key.
Agree.
Let's see. So what else? We've got, I like this question. What's your favorite company value? I'll start with mine, and then Deandra, maybe you can think of yours. Two come to mind immediately. So collaboration. I am a huge team player. I love to collaborate. And frankly, I think that's the only way you get anything done, is to get just the insight from all different views. Also disruption. I love to try and make it a change. Deandra said it, challenge the status quo. We've landed at the most amazing company where we live and breathe growth mindset. It's our mantra to an extent. So I can't stress that enough. It's disruption, right? And just being in this community where I feel like we're all innovators and disruptors. It's so great. Deandra, what do you think? What comes to mind to you for your favorite company value?
So disruption is definitely one, but the one that really gets to me, and I think it goes to my background, I started off as a developer, is execution. And I was also a project manager. It's one thing to, for us to be disruptive and be innovative. That's another that I always think about. But it's the execution, it's the path and the plan to get us there. Because you can have high hopes and high dreams all day long, but you've got to execute on that journey to make it happen. So it's execution.
Absolutely. All right, let's look for some more. Here's a good one. So what is the best advice that someone gave you? Anything? I've got one recently I'll share with you. It was a chief of staff to the president at Palo Alto Networks who is no longer here, but she gave me the most amazing advice recently, and I've clinged onto it, and I can't let it go. And it was actually when I was sort of contemplating this role change. And she said, don't spend any time thinking about what if or what could be, what would have happened if I took that, because you will never know. Yeah. And it sounds so simple and basic and fundamental, but she's absolutely right. And especially my personality and the way I am, I can get in my thought thinking that and spending time on it, and just her saying it and recognizing it. It was such an aha, like you truly will never know, right? What direction or what could be. And so just don't waste your time and energy thinking about that. And so I loved that. And I've really hung on to it recently.
No, that's a good one. I have like so many bouncing around in my head, but I think it was when I was starting to make the transition from individual contributor and I was promoted to director. It was, don't overthink it. What I think what we see in ourselves as women is that we have to make sure we're 100% right, or we're right, to not be questioned. But we also have to remember is that it took us a long journey to get to these steps in our career, and we worked really hard to get there. And we have a lot of background and knowledge that many times our instincts and our guts are based on so much factual knowledge. You can go make a good decision on about 80% of the information. So it's don't overthink it, and just go in that room and know, based on all of your experience, your instinct, and everything that you've done, when you've got that solution in your head and you want to drive your team forward, then go for it. So it's something that I think we hear a lot, where you see the comments about men who, sorry if there are any men on the panel, but men will go in with their bravado. Even it may not even be a job they fully understand. And women will take the time to do the research. Honestly, if you've got that background, but you may not have 100% of it, your background is what will get you through that room. People are looking for confidence, and the confidence may not be in, I know everything, but the confidence is, I know what it takes to get the job done, even if I have to figure it out and hire a team to do it. So that would be my.
Absolutely. Here's another question I love. Deandra, I'd love to give this one to you, but curious your perspective. Is it helpful when looking for a new role within the organization to take on projects outside of your scope? Oh my gosh, yes. It's honestly, it's how I've kind of moved through my career. It's looking, again, it's that being uncomfortable. I think my brain will blow up if I start to go through all of the examples of everything that I've done. It's if you look at trying to just stay within your scope of knowledge, it's going to take you a minute to grow. If you put yourself in situations where there may not be everything sorted out. Startups are also one of those great. The one thing, honestly, that I loved about Palo Alto Networks, it's perceived as a larger company. It's greater than 10,000 employees, but there's so much growth and innovation within it. You have that startup mindset. So there's a lot of things that have not been built out. A lot of opportunity to figure out how to shape and grow. And not only you're shaping and growing as a leader, but when you're learning how to build something, you're having to build it broader than what you typically would at a company that's got every process built out. What I love is to walk in, and it's more work, but I love to be able to take something and I'm able to learn every single piece about it. So when I moved on to the next step, I understand how the pieces fit together. So every project I do, I'm able to bring all the pieces in one. So no, absolutely great question. Yeah, I couldn't agree more too. And it's funny, I just echo so much what you say. At the very least, it's a learning opportunity. It's networking. You're meeting that many more people and connections. And it's funny. I think we were talking about this in some of our preparation sessions, but it could be a new project and it's nuggets of information you're learning, or you're deep in the trenches and you're thinking, what is this? I don't quite understand how it fits together. There will be a moment guaranteed down the line, and it's just like, aha, right? It all comes together. It all starts to make sense. And there was a reason that you had taken that step. So I echo you completely. Absolutely. Anything you can get involved with outside of your scope. Absolutely. While albeit managing your responsibility and your direct scope.
Yes, do your job.
Yes. Yes. Let's see. What are some best, this is a good question. What are some best practices when networking? Any tidbits or pieces of advice you can give there?
What's interesting, and this was, again, I keep going back to Europe because I grew so much as a person, and my career grew a lot in Europe, but me as a human being, me as a female, as a person looking to really grow who she, define who she would become later. And what I found, it was about relationships. As you work with other companies and you're trying to convince them to buy the software or buy your service, at the end of the day, they're making an investment in you. And they're not just making an investment in the product, because they're also saying, I'm going to lay my job on the line and sign my name on this contract because I believe in the story you just told me. And I need for you to make sure that I'm on this journey. So I learned that building a relationship was probably one of the biggest things that I could do from networking, because it was no longer, can you help me figure out this? It was, oh, let's have a personal connection. So when things are good or bad, you've got someone there, to see you through the end. And when you do need something, a job, I need you to help, whatever comes up, there's something more personal there than just I just need you to check this box for me. So that was my learning. So Danielle?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm kind of piggybacking on the same question, but what are some suggestions to find mentors and sponsors, right? And I think depending on your workplace, at least at Palo Alto Networks, we've got this phenomenal program where folks can go in and tap into mentors. You can even build out your profile to kind of capture your interests and hobbies, from a personal perspective, and even on the professional perspective, sort of what it is you like to do. And it's great. So any opportunity at your own employers that you can have for that, right? There's great things like LinkedIn, networking activities and groups, although they're much more virtual these days, but anything, right, that you can and sign up for to build your network, absolutely go for it. And I can't stress enough that balance that we talked about earlier. Get that balance across your ecosystem. And if you're still exploring what it is you like to do, or truly where you want to focus, maybe prioritize that type of mentor or sponsor for sure.
So let's see for other questions. I think we covered.
We did, yes.
What's your favorite? Oh, here's one for you, Danielle. What's your favorite part about working with Palo Alto Networks?
The people. It's I was gonna say sounds cheesy. I'm so blown away by the talent. I said this before. Everyone is so innovative. They're so disruptive. They're so collaborative, and it's just it's this amazing environment to be a part of. It's like this energy and this buzz that you feel, and that everyone is just eager and anxious to work towards that same goal and deliver. And I've never been a part of such a broad community where everyone is aligned in that sense. So that is my favorite part. The other thing is just, as the pandemic hit, I was so blown away and impressed by the way leadership handled it, from internally and externally. It just reiterated what an amazing and phenomenal company I joined. And I'm so proud to be a Palo Alto networker. So that's mine. How about for you, Deandra?
Honestly, it's the people. I think when I joined in the middle of the pandemic, so it was one of those curious moments in time where you're like, I'm really not going to meet anyone on my team. The only person I'd met in the entire company was my boss, because I had a face-to-face interview with her before everything locked down. And the connections we were able to build over Zoom were honestly just some of the more open and not, personal, to be able to, we're working Zoom has put us all in a position where we're working way more hours than what we probably did before COVID hit. But not only were we able to get the job done, but we're also able to make personal connections and get to know each other. And a few months ago, when we were finally able to at least have 1 or 2 meetings, we were hugging as if we were all like lifelong family members that hadn't seen each other in like 30 years. So honestly, I don't know if it was the Zoom or the exhaustion or just the fact that I was trying to get up to speed as quickly as possible and meet as many people as possible. But I had an opportunity to meet and still have the opportunity to meet just some of the strongest, gifted, and nicest people that I've come across. So yeah.
Well it has been interesting trying to get up to speed in pandemic world. I recently had an offsite with my team, and we'd all met over Zoom, but it was like we had all known each other forever when we were together in person. It was amazing. So with that, we are at time, and I want to be aware of everyone's time on this Friday afternoon, evening, wherever you are located in the world. Deandra and I cannot thank you enough for choosing to join the session and spend some time with us. We thank you very much. If you have questions about career opportunities at Palo Alto Networks, please do refer to the link that Anthea dropped in chat. And we hope you all have a great evening. Thank you so much.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.